Hey, Micah, how many local football teams do you think are winning playoff games this week?
Oh, 6 or 7. So, Tim, I think it's official. We just killed that trend because if you and I are talking about it, it is definitely lame and not cool anymore.
Well, I can only hope that's the case because I spent a good amount of time in an elementary school and I am done with that. I think every adult is done with that trend.
I think a lot of high schoolers are even done with it. I asked my youngest daughter, who's a junior in high school, about it, and she just like rolled her eyes and it's just like, don't even. And then she had to explain to me like how it got started. It was like, it makes no sense like how something goes viral anymore.
It doesn't. Things catch fire and you just never know. But let's talk about something real here.
Yeah, let's talk about, the things that are, or the people who are hoping to catch fire are the football teams playing in the postseason, starting with the Week 10 state preliminary round this Friday and Saturday. And we got teams going on the road. We got some teams hosting, but it's going to be a wild Friday and Saturday. And I think there's a couple teams I think might be able to win on the road, but the teams that earn the right to host, I think, have set them up in some pretty good positions.
Yeah, it's second year of this arrangement, the statewide sort of cross-district thing. So it's kind of like I've seen some people refer to as the round of 32, which kind of implies it's the sort of the start of the state playoffs. Officially, the state playoffs start next week. Sunday, the teams that win this week will advance and then get set into a different committee. Will set those 1 through 16 seedings. And those will set up the state playoffs for 2A, 3A, and 4A, and 1A. It's a 12-team setup. So, it's going to be interesting to see just how teams. I think this week is always interesting because it's an opportunity to kind of see how our teams match up with other teams from around the state. Everyone's pretty much been in league, especially in the 2A and the 1A, since the middle of September, and the other teams for 4 or 5 weeks now. And so now we get to kind of go back and see, what's changed in those 2 months since then and see how these teams match up.
Well, and mostly we see how the teams handle the pressure of now win or go home. This is the part of the season where you can't have an off day. And we've seen it happen before where teams we thought were going to win pretty handily stub their toe, and next thing you know, their season's over. And we've seen teams get hot and get on a run and go pretty deep in the postseason. So that's why it's our favorite time of the year.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I always think back 2 years ago, Seton Catholic, which was the runner-up in the Trico, but they caught fire in the postseason. They were winning some thrilling games and made it all the way to the state semifinals. It would set them up for the next year to make it to the state championship game. So you just never know who's going to get hot this time of year and what that's going to mean going forward.
Well, let's start with those Trico matchups. We'll kind of flip the script on its head a little bit instead of starting with the 4As, which we will get to in good time. But I want to start with Seton and La Center, not only because they're both hosting state preliminary games this Saturday, but I really think that last week's game between them that decided the Trico League title, basically it gave Seton a much easier road to getting into the state playoffs proper. They get to host 5-4 Connell, where La Center gets a pretty good 8-1 Granite Falls team. Now, I think if last Friday's game had switched, you could easily see La Center hosting a 5-4 team and Seton having to play a team that's won 8 games this year. But how do you think both La Center and Seton kind of match up going into these games?
Yeah, I kind of thought going into last Sunday when we were waiting to see the matchups come up, I thought the teams that ended up getting home games this week were the teams that I was expecting to get home games. It's pretty much the league champions, Camas, Kelso, Washougal, and then both of the top 2 Trico teams. So, Seton Catholic going to be at home against Connell. And so sometimes when you look at these matchups, you look at their win-loss records and you go, okay, this team is 8-1, this team is 5-4. But sometimes that can be very misleading. Connell comes from the east side of the state. They've got a rich history, a solid program, and made playoffs runs in the past. I remember a couple of years ago, Le Center played Connell in a first round game. I think it was like in 2018 or 2019. They hosted at Le Center, and I think Le Center was like a 3 seed or a 4 seed, and ended up losing that game. So, so the fact that Connell is 5-4, I would not go to sleep on these guys. Their losses are to Othello, Kashmir, I think,
number 2 ranked Kashmir,
and then Royal,
number 1 ranked Royal.
So those losses they were lopsided losses. But the rest of their games they won lopsided games. So so the 5-4 is a little bit misleading because they played some really really good teams to get that 5-4, and they've actually won 5 of 6 as they head into the playoffs. So. It's something that I think Seton Catholic fans don't want to go to sleep on this Connell team because they play tough, grinded out football, and I think it's going to be a good matchup for Week 10.
Yeah, absolutely. I that's one of the things that we love so much about the postseason is the teams that make it here, they have to earn it, and so you get some of these matchups where you haven't faced a team from that part of the state, a part of the state where they just happen to play really good small school football. Now, Le Center, they've got some injury concerns, don't they?
Yeah. So quarterback Nate Rembus injured his elbow last week early in the game against Seton Catholic. His status going forward, we don't know. Sometimes when you hurt the elbow, it could be something you're back the next week and you're a little bit sore. Other times you can, it could be something that could keep you out for several weeks or even longer. So don't really know who's going to be at quarterback. But I think the thing about Le Center and John Lambert and the way he's kind of built his program, he's been replacing quarterbacks. Like it seems like every year he goes out and he finds somebody else to fill that role. A couple of years ago, Garrett Manu broke his arm midway through the season, and then Houston Coyle came in. He was a receiver, but he took over a quarterback. And then last year was Wyatt. I always forget.
Wyatt Aislinn.
He was the center the year before.
Yeah, it's like plug and place basically.
And they put him in at quarterback last year. So Jet Johnson has had some experience. Le Center had some lopsided games earlier. He's got some experience in there, and so I kind of feel like they're going to find someone to plug that hole and do the things that they need to do to be successful. Now the flip side is so they're playing an 8-1 team. So the first thing you need to know about Granite Falls is that they're an 8-1 team, and they're going on the road. So the league that they play in doesn't have a lot of powerhouse names. So I think that's the reason why they're traveling this week. Now they do come from the same league that Kings comes from. I think their win last week was over Kings, something like 20-14. Kings has had a good program over the year, and I think 2 years ago when Seton went to the semifinals at Royal, they had to beat Kings up north, and it was like a wild 47-42 game. So so just having come through Kings, you kind of get an idea that Granite Falls is. But I think the very fact that they're 8-1 and they were sent on the road to play a runner-up team from another league is kind of the committee saying that we're not really sure how good this.
We're not sold on that team.
So they're a little bit of a wild card. They did win 8 games, so that must mean they're a good team. But we'll find out against a Le Center team that's a little banged up and trying to plug holes. They are going to play on the grass field at Le Center, which is kind of cool. It's always nice to have a playoff game on the grass.
In the mud, maybe, with how wet it's going to be this week. But, we talk about going on the road. Kalama and Kingsway, congratulations for making it to the state preliminary round. Behind door number 1, Kalama, is a trip to number 2 ranked Kashmir. And behind door number 2, Kingsway, is a trip to multiple defending state champion Royals. So enjoy the experience.
It's kind of funny. Sometimes when we travel around the state and covering things, especially as you go to the east side of the state, you'll go, oh, that's where such and such place is. Some names that you see. So my wife and I, we went to Leavenworth this summer for our anniversary for a weekend, and I was driving, and I was like, Kashmir. It's like, it's just down the highway from Leavenworth. So here's what you need to know about Kashmir. So Kashmir is 8-1. Their one loss is an overtime loss. I think it was 21-15 to Royal.
Yes.
Which is probably the closest game that Royal has played since the pandemic.
And could be a state championship game preview.
Yeah, it could be a state championship game preview. Could be a state semifinal, depending on how the bracket seeds turn out. But yeah, so Kalama going to Kashmir is probably not going to be positive outlook.
Well, you pick up some applets and cotlets. My wife and I have this long-running feud where I love applets and cotlets. She hates it. She's Team Almond Roca for the official candy of the state of Washington. But no, definitely go and get yourself a box of applets and cotlets.
And then on the other side, you got Kingsway Christian, which is going up against Royal, which has a string of state championships. It's kind of hard when you look at some of these matchups. Like, did they actually seed them 1 to 24 when they're putting together matchups? And it's not the way this week is supposed to. They want to try to get matchups that sort of are equitable in that way, but they also take into account like travel. It's like they want to keep teams close together. Well, when Kingsway is making the 4.5-hour drive to Royal, then clearly travel was not a consideration in this matchup. So, it's and they played on Friday night. I was surprised that they got the matchup was on Friday against Royal, making that trip for Kingsway. So, really, really tough draw for Kalama and Kingsway. Congratulations on making it to the playoffs, and I hope you enjoy the experience and then the trips up the central part of the state this week. But yeah, it's going to be a hard road.
Yeah, but just ended on a positive note for Kingsway, making it to the postseason for the third time in the last 4 years. Shout out to Coach Dale Rule and everything they're doing out there at Kingsway. Let's move to the 3As, because my next question for you, Tim, is which team that is going on the road from Southwest Washington do you think has the best chance of actually coming out with a win? And I'm going to argue that it's Evergreen, not only because of the playmakers they have, but the fact that in the 3A they're playing a very good team in 8-1 Liberty, but they avoided the really scary teams, the O'Days, the Eastside Catholics, the Lakes, the Bellevues.
Yeah. I think if you're in the 3A and you avoid the Metro League, then you're pretty happy with that matchup. So Liberty is they're part of the Issaquah School District, but they're actually closer to Renton. Hawkinson fans might remember, like about a decade ago, Hawkinson played Liberty in a 2A state playoff game up at Battleground a few years ago. So they made the move up to 3A. The KingCo Conference is one of these tiered conferences. So they have a top tier, and they mix up classifications. It doesn't really matter. So the top tier in the KingCo, that has like Skyline and Bothell, and 3A Bellevue is in there, and I think Mount Si and Woodinville. The next tier down is where Liberty is, 3A team. They're in there with Lake Washington, which is a 4A team. They're 9-0, but they're going on the road in the 4A playoffs this week. So obviously the tiered situation there on seeding, they were like, okay, they're 9-0, but so Liberty's in that, but they're a 3A team. Again, with Evergreen's playmakers, if they can strike some big plays, make some big plays downfield and maybe get up early, there's an opportunity there for a win. I think probably maybe the best among the road teams that are heading on the road. Liberty's their one loss was a narrow loss, I think, to Lake Washington, and they also have a very close win over Issaquah, which is also another 4A team in that division. So. And otherwise, they kind of rolled through the rest of their schedule. So a little bit of a mixed signals there. It's like this second tier, but so they're clearly not Bellevue, but still look like they're a capable team up there. So it should be an interesting matchup for the Plainsmen.
Yeah, and I mean, the Plainsmen, we talked about it in previous episodes. They're looking to kind of break this postseason slide that they've been on. Just haven't been able to get a postseason win since they won it all in 2004. But I would, again, peg them as probably my favorite to get a road win from Southwest Washington.
Yeah, they've improved their running game with Malachi Turner-Hodges in there, and that just kind of throws in different dimension. It really kind of opens things up for Terrence Sarion. I think Coach Swain and his staff they kind of figured things out. I think it was against Prairie when I saw him, where they were just hitting like short, quick passes to Sarion because the defenders have to respect his speed, and they have to give him this cushion. So they would just hit these. I think he had like 12 receptions, just short passes, and eventually that would open up the middle for Darren Schmidt, or maybe Sarion can get a stop and go and get it play downfield, and it opened up the running game inside. So it's kind of like they kind of created some opportunities for them to have success in other places other than big plays, and I think if they can continue to do that and still get some big plays, then this is a game that they can maybe win.
Well, Prairie, they clinched their Week 10 berth with a game that came down to the last play last week against Heritage. They had to stop a 2-point conversion inside the final minute. Prairie extends their season, but they have a tough one coming up. They go up to Mount Tahoma, 9-0 Mount Tahoma, ranked number 2 in the latest coaches poll. That's going to be a tough one for Prairie.
Yeah, I mean, yeah. So again, it's the same boat, but the opposite with like Evergreen. The Evergreen kind of avoided some of those, the O'Days, the East Side Catholics, the Mount Tahomas, the Bellevues, and Prairie did not.
Yeah.
So to put this into perspective for you, what might you expect if Prairie were playing Camas this week? You probably figure that would not be a favorable matchup for Prairie, right? Mm-hmm. Well, Mount Tahoma pounded Camas back in September, like 41-14 or something like that. Now, granted, there were, a lot of mistakes that Camas made that allowed Mount Tahoma to attack and get up a big early lead, but they're a very, very good football team, and so this is going to be a very, very tough challenge.
Yeah, I've heard people that follow the football statewide saying that the 3A might be the most exciting bracket to follow because of teams like Mount Tahoma going against teams like O'Day, going against teams like Eastside Catholic. I mean, that's just a murderer's row of high quality football teams, and Mount Tahoma is among them.
Yeah, I mean, we had a team down here, Kelso, that went 8-1 and had a really good season, and then they were playing better and better as the season went along. But they can't even get a sniff in any coaches poll or media poll in the 3A just because it is so stacked.
Yeah. Well, Kelso gets to host, though, 8-1. I think it kind of took us by surprise just how good of a season Kelso ended up having. I know we picked Evergreen, a lot of us, to win that league, and Kelso just like, well, we're doing what we're going to do and run the ball, play physical, even though they lost their quarterback, head into Week 9. Kelso hosting a playoff game probably wouldn't put it by them to not come out with a win.
Yeah, and again, the matchups here in past years, Kelso has matched up against again some of a lesser metro team, a team that maybe is 5-4 or 6-3, but still pretty good.
Yeah.
They get Federal Way, which is from the North Puget Sound League, which doesn't have the same sort of track record as having successful teams. Federal Way, they lost some lopsided games to Enumclaw and to White River, and then they also lost a game to Spanaway Lake, which is a 4A team in the South Puget Sound League that went 3-6. And then they have a whole bunch of lopsided wins over some teams that are not all that strong. So, so it's kind of like, okay, they lost to some really good teams, and then they lost to this 3-6, Spanaway Lake team, and you're kind of like, well, I don't,
which Federal Way is going to show up.
Yeah, so I kind of figure that, Kelso is just a team that's just going to do what they're going to do. They're just going to pound away, and I think that's a recipe for success in the playoffs when you're playing a team that maybe it's going to depend on trying to, create some turnovers or make some big plays to score a win. So I think it's a good draw for the Highlanders, and it should be a good Week 10 matchup for them.
All right, another team hosting is, of course, Camas. Camas, we've kind of gotten used to this, being able to count on the paper makers to stay home in Week 10 and possibly in the first few rounds of the state tournament. But Camas is kind of in that 8-9 ranked statewide area, and so this might be the one chance you get to see the paper makers at home in the postseason. 7-2 facing a 5-4 Olympia team will let the seeding committee take care of what it has to do for the round of 16. But to get there, Camas needs to take care of business on Friday at Dock.
Yeah, and you shouldn't fall asleep on Olympia. I think the Bears, people are going to look and see that 5-4 record and think, maybe Camas got maybe a favorable draw. Again, the geography plays into it. I think Olympia is actually the closest team that could have come down to play Camas from a geography standpoint. Olympia, there's two divisions in the South Puget Sound League. South Puget Sound League, last year the state champion Sumner came out of the South Puget Sound League. This year you have Graham-Kapowsin, is like 8-1, Puyallup's 9-0. There are two divisions. There's one division that has Puyallup, and it has Sumner, and it has Curtis. That's probably the stronger division. Olympia comes out of the other division, which is led by Graham-Kapowsin, and then Olympia's in there as well, number 2 in that division. So they lost 34-20 to Graham-Kapowsin, which is a competitive score at least. And again, they've won 4 of their last 5, so they're coming in on a bit of a hot string into the playoffs. Looking at their results really quickly, Olympia looks like a team that plays really good defense. Other than that Graham-Kapowsin game, I don't think they allowed a team to score more than like 15 or 16 points in a game. Even in their losses, they were low-scoring affairs. This is probably going to be a grinded-out defensive battle kind of thing, and I think what Camas needs to avoid doing is some of the things that they have been doing later in the season here, which is kind of scuffling along there,
letting
for
teams
a while,
hang around,
and then coming back and winning. Like I was out at Camas's in Skyview game, and I was just there for the second quarter taking photos. On the sidelines talking to people, and they were like, "Yeah, we'll come back in the second half," and they did. They came back and they eventually won the game, but. You get into the playoff and you start doing that, you're starting to play with fire because these are capable teams that can jump up and bite you on mistakes like that. Again, we're used to this. We're used to Camas getting to Week 10 and hosting in Week 10 and winning in Week 10. I think they've won like in Week 10 almost every year that they played going back to like 2012, except one year. I think it was about 3 years ago. They lost to North Creek at home. So it can happen. And papermakers need to be ready and play well from the start.
Well, another road warrior, I think, that has a potential to maybe steal a win on the road is Battleground. And I say that because they've been kind of playing their best football here at the end of the season. And they're a team that I think I sense a trend in kind of you breaking some of these matchups down that 5 and 4 teams tend to be better than their record shows. And I think this is the case with Battleground in that they're 5 and 4, but again, they came up with their 2 biggest wins of the year, the last 2 weeks of the year. And I think Bothell is a type of team that I think doesn't really blow you away. 6-2, ranked number 9 in the most recent coaches poll. And so a team that, while they probably are the favorite, if Battleground plays its type of physical defense, I think the Tigers hang around in that game.
So 2 things about Bothell. So their 2 losses were, one was to Lewiston of Idaho, which, I don't know. It's Idaho. I don't know, much about Idaho football. The other one was a 14-7 loss to Skyline. That was their one loss within the top division of the Kingco. But they've got wins over Kennedy Catholic, and they've got a 36-35 win over Bellevue. So I think Bothell is a pretty good team, and I think this is going to be a tough battle for the Tigers. Yes, they have been playing well here in these last 2 weeks. They're getting a little bit of confidence. They've been maybe playing their best football. I think the committee that set these matchups up, they looked at Battleground and they looked at so they won 3 games and then they lost 4 and then they won their last 2. And in that 4-game losing streak, there was the loss to Camas, which they played well, and then the other losses was to Post Falls of Idaho, and then they lost to 2A WF West at home, and they lost to 1A Cascade Christian at home. So those are good teams in those classifications, but they are 2 classifications down from the Tigers. So I think when you're looking at a seating committee and you look at those losses, you kind of go, So maybe the Tigers weren't playing quite their best back then. They made a lot of mistakes that turned those losses from what could have been wins. I mean, they're all very close games. They can't do that.
No,
this week. They can't do that this week. Bothell, I think, is they play hard football, the same kind of sort of grinded out football that Battleground does, and I think they're going to make it a challenge for the Tigers to run the ball, which is going to put a lot of pressure on Ethan Adams in the passing game to try to make something happen. So, the Tigers don't want to fall behind early in this one because it could be a long night for them.
Yeah, well, let's finish with the 2As, and we go back to an episode we did a few weeks ago where we made some predictions and weighted our confidence level by them, and I'm sticking by this one. The question was, do any of the 2A Greater St. Helens League teams win a Week 10 game? And I said, yes, absolutely, because of Washougal. Washougal, they blitz through the 2A Greater St. Helens League undefeated. They have one of the area's best running backs in Royce Jones. They have a very capable quarterback in Tripp Leifson. And the Panthers get to host a Week 10 game against a 5-4 Fife team. No pressure, Panthers, but make my prediction come true. Beat Fife and make it to the state playoffs.
I think I was one of the ones who said no to this question, and now I'm kind of like regretting it. I think when we did that episode in early October's mid-season, Washougal got some big wins against some of the better teams within the 2A Greater St. Helens, but they were tight games. They were close games against Ridgefield, against Woodland, even against Mark Morris was a competitive game. And so I kind of thought that there was this sort of accordion of talent, so we're like Washougal was the best, but when you get such a tight competitive bunch of teams together and then they go out and they play teams from other parts of the state, the matchups may not really work. But really within these last 4 weeks of the season in October, Washougal not only in the standings separated themselves, but I think they really separated themselves from a talent standpoint from the rest of this league. And Royce Jones has been a big part of that, and the defense has been a big part of that. Yeah, sure, they were playing some of the non-playoff teams from the 2A GSHL like R.A. Long and Hawkinson and Bay, but the win over Columbia River a couple of weeks ago I was very much impressed. It was like 47-28, but they were up like 41-14 in the third quarter or something like that. They really, really played very well in that game. I think it kind of showed their potential. So now they get this Fife team that's 4-5, and they started the season 0-3. So it's again another team that has played better late in the season. But it's a situation where the good teams that they played White River, they played Ording. Ording is a team that eliminated Washougal from the state playoffs a couple years back. Franklin Pierce, and Week 9 they lost to Stillicum, but they still qualified for the playoffs. Most of those games were lopsided losses. The other teams on their schedule, they handled pretty well. So again, it's kind of like, well, who are we going to see here? And I think if Washougal is able to do what they've been able to do, which is run the ball and then mix in a pass to kind of keep teams off balance and from keying in to shut down the running game, I think Washougal should be able to handle this one.
Well, one of the reasons I've been so bullish on Washougal probably goes back to the start of the season when I talked to Dave Hajek and kind of how he really had a lot of faith in this year's senior-laden team. I mean, they basically start seniors all over the field. And I think that's kind of what you've seen is that this is a mature, seasoned group that has, figured out their identity throughout, they started out kind of knowing kind of a little bit of their potential, but then they've even refined that as the season has gone along. So again, a team that I think is playing their best football at the right time of the year. I wouldn't put past the Panthers to go on a little mini run here in the postseason.
Yeah, I think it'll all come down again to seeding, right? Because even though they are 8-1, again, in the polls and the rankings, whether it's coaches or media, they haven't been able to crack the top 10. And so where does that put you on a seeding situation? Are you going to be like an 11 or a 12? And who's that going to match up on the other side of a talented 2A bracket? But we were talking about this in the office before we came down here about how Royce Jones has just kind of, been this 1,000-yard plus rusher. He had almost 300 yards last week against Hawkinson. We were talking about in Week 1, he got like 4 carries and was kind of the backup, and he kind of emerged into that role. And that's why I think the first couple of weeks, and their one loss against Prairie was in there. I think they were just trying to still figure themselves out and figure out where their people were going to be. And I think once they figured that out, they've been very, very good.
Well, I was at that game against Prairie, and I think that was a game where quarterback Trip Leifson was hurt late in the first half, and they kind of had no other options but to just put Royce Jones back there in the Wildcat, and it was basically like they said, well, we're just going to put our best athlete back there to have the ball and just go make it up, go figure something out. And that was the game they rushed for 250 yards. So I think it's almost like a seemingly misfortunate event with having their quarterback temporarily go down turned into something that ended up influencing the season, where they saw, hey, we got this guy that could be the running back number one back there. Let's kind of direct him more toward that direction, and so it could be, that injury where your starting quarterback misses the second half might have ended up influencing the rest of the season.
Yeah, and I think it threw another wrinkle into their offense. Now they have Trip Leifson back there at quarterback. Sometimes he takes a snap, he hands it off to Royce Jones. Other times Royce is just in there in the Wildcat, and they'll just snap it straight to him, especially down around the goal line or short yardage and then he turns it into a big play. So, or
they have a quick scat back like DeAndre Goodell, and so it's like they're like, okay, now we can have a different shades of the running game, either the physical, pound, straight ahead style of Royce Jones, or the more speed oriented approach with DeAndre. So one of the games that I think is really interesting in Week 10 here, Columbia River going on the road to WF West, a WF West program that's traditionally been really strong out of the 2A Evergreen Conference. But I like the matchup for Columbia River in that, they run the ball well, and it's going to be wet and it's going to be on grass.
Is it WF West? I don't know. I think they might have.
They might have changed it.
I know a couple of years ago, they were on grass, but I'm not totally sure if they've turfed that field or not. But either way, it's going to be, it might very well be a soggy, damp night, and the kind of conditions that would lend itself for Columbia River. WF West, I think they can go either way on this. They can run the ball if they have to run it. They can throw it when they need to throw it. They're a balanced offense. One of their two losses was last week at Tumwater. It's nothing to sneeze at. Tumwater is one of the top 2A teams in the state.
Yeah, nobody takes any.
And I think their other loss was like early in the season to a ranked North Kitsap team. Mm-hmm. So and a few weeks back, this early October, WF West came to Battleground and beat Battleground on their home field. So, they've got some players there, and they've got a track record of success. And so, certainly, it's not what Columbia River has experienced in recent years, where they have to go up and play at Tumwater, or last year was Franklin Pierce, which was really good. But
it's a tough challenge.
It's still going to be a tough challenge. They got to play, a clean game, a good game. They got to, find some rooms for Savion McCoy to do what he does, and also strike some plays in the passing game and play their solid defense. Yeah,
the defense is going to be huge, but I think you hit it on the head. They need to possess the ball, have these long, grinded out, 12 play drives that eat up half of the quarter, if not more, and they need to not turn over the ball.
Absolutely.
All right. Ridgefield will end on them. They go on the road to two-time defending 2A champion Anacortes. I'd never been to Anacortes before this past summer when we went up to the San Juan Islands, and we stayed the night in Anacortes, and was remarking that their entire main street, they have those flag banners of every senior in their senior class. So it's one of these one high school towns where literally they celebrate. They had some of the restaurants had like Seahawks state champions. 2024, 2023. So the Ridgefield Spudders are going to go up against a team and a town that loves their high school football and plays it very well.
Yeah, so this year's team maybe not as good as the last couple teams. They have a couple losses on their schedule, but they still are a potent and a quality opponent, especially to go on the road and to play for Ridgefield to do this. I think yeah, it's going to be a really, really tough matchup for them in this draw. Yeah, it's just I think the top half of the 2A bracket, there's just a lot of teams up there, and Anacortes is one of those teams. Also with Archbishop Murphy and Tumwater, and so yeah, this is going to be a tough one for the Spudders.
Yeah, but congratulations on making it. One of the highlights of their season was last Friday in the rain at home, winning a close 17-16 game over two-time defending league champion Woodland to clinch their spot here in the Week 10 playoffs. So congratulations to all the teams that make it. Some of the teams are going to win and move on, but every team that makes it to this point. That's something to hang your head high.
Absolutely. And you will also give a shout out to Mark Morris. They're, as we're recording this on Tuesday afternoon, they're playing a mini game tonight that could put them into the Week 10 as well. They would play at West Valley of Spokane if they advance against Aberdeen tonight. So, good on the Monarchs. That was a team that started the season, I think, like 0-4 or something like that. And they played well down the stretch to make it to the playoffs. And then when Ridgefield knocked off Woodland, they knocked Woodland out of the playoffs. So, so congratulations to all the teams that are making it this far.
All right. Be sure to follow us on all of our social media channels Friday and Saturday. I'm head over to state cross country. I think my wife asked me how many years is this now you've covered state cross country, and I think I counted 13. So wow. I'm a grizzled veteran of the Sun Willows Golf Course, where our area's best runners are going to conclude their season. But big slate of football. Can't wait to see how it turns out. Can't wait to see who advances to the final 16 in the state playoffs. Be sure to follow us on 360 Preps, and we'll see you next time.